Welcome, friends. In this audiobook series, The Crux, studies show that 90% of people who start a self-improvement journey quit before the breakthrough happens. To ensure you aren't one of them, I've structured this audiobook to mirror a psychological rewiring process. The most critical shift occurs in 20 points in this audiobook series. So listen closely, and you could give so relaxing moment to your eyes. From screen, let's start. In the book The Power of Habit, Charles Duhigg explains that habits are not destiny. By understanding the neurological loop that governs our behavior, we can fiddle with the gears of our lives, businesses, and societies. The core conclusion of the book is that habits cannot be eradicated, only replaced. To change a habit, you must keep the same cue and reward, but insert a new routine. The 20 core conclusions or summary. Point 1 is the habit loop. Every habit consists of a three-part neurological loop: the cue trigger, the routine, behavior, and the reward the payoff. Point 2 is the brain's efficiency. Habits emerge because the brain is constantly looking for ways to save effort. By turning routines into automatic habits, the brain can ramp down and focus on more complex tasks. Point 3 is the basal ganglia. While most memories are stored in the cerebral cortex, habits are stored in the basal ganglia, a primitive part of the brain. This is why habits persist, even when people lose their memory of other events. Now, point 4 is cravings drive the loop. A cue and reward alone aren't enough. A habit only becomes automatic when the brain starts craving the reward as soon as it perceives the cue. Point number 5 is the golden rule of habit change. You cannot extinguish a bad habit. To change it, you must keep the old cue, deliver the old reward, but insert a new routine. Point 6 is belief is essential. For a habit change to stay permanent, especially under stress, you must believe that change is possible. Point 7 is the power of community. Belief is easier to sustain when it occurs within a group or community. For example, Alcoholics Anonymous, or a running club. Point 8 is keystone habits. Some habits matter more than others. Keystone habits like exercise or making your bed create a ripple effect, naturally leading to improvements in other unrelated areas of life. Point 9 is small wins. Keystone habits work by providing small wins. These minor successes build a sense of momentum and convince you that bigger achievements are possible. Point 10 says that willpower as a muscle. Willpower isn't just a skill. It's a finite resource, like a muscle. If you exhaust it on one task, you have less left for others later in the day. Now, point 11 is institutional habits. Organizations have habits too, often called routines. These are necessary to keep a company running smoothly and to prevent constant internal infighting. Point 12 is the danger of destructive habits. Without conscious management, organizational habits can become toxic. A crisis is often the only time these entrenched truces can be reshaped. Point 13 is targeting the right cue. Most cues fall into 5 categories: location, time, emotional state, other people, or the immediately preceding action. Point 14 is predicting consumer behavior. Companies use habit data to predict and influence what you will buy next. They often sandwich new products between familiar ones to make them more acceptable. Point 15 is the familiarity loop. Our brains are wired to prefer things that feel familiar. To make something new popular, it must be presented in a way that triggers an existing habit or feeling. Point 16 is social habits and movements. Large-scale social changes, like the civil rights movement, start with the habits of friendship, grow through the habits of communities, and are sustained by new habits that change a person's sense of identity. Point 17 is weak ties. Habits of weak ties, acquaintances, are more powerful for social movements and job hunting than strong ties. Close friends, because they connect us to new information and social pressure. Point 18 is the ethics of habit. Duhigg argues that once you are aware of a habit, you have a moral responsibility to change it. You are no longer acting on autopilot. You are making a choice. Point 19. The framework for change. To change any habit, you must identify the routine, experiment with rewards, isolate the cue, and have a plan. Now, point 20 is habits are malleable. No matter how ingrained a behavior is, it can be reshaped. Change might not be fast or easy, but it is always possible through the deliberate application of the habit loop. Here, we have also concluded only core and crucial lesson of this book in just few points, which will definitely add more value in understanding this book. So the point is, understanding the mechanics, the habit loop. The most vital takeaway from Duhigg's research is the visualization of how our brains process automaticity. The strategy of replacement. The golden rule is the practical core of the book. If you try to stop a habit through sheer willpower, for example, I will stop eating cookies, you are fighting your neurology. Instead, you must analyze the reward you are seeking. Scenario: you eat a cookie at 3 p.m. every day. Analysis: is the reward the sugar hunger, or is it the 10-minute break and socializing with coworkers? Transformation: if the reward is socializing, the new routine is to walk to a colleague's desk and chat for 10 minutes without the cookie. Because the cue 3 p.m. and the reward, social connection, remain the same, the brain accepts the new routine. Willpower and keystone habits. Duhigg emphasizes that willpower is the most important keystone habit for individual success. In a famous study, children who could resist eating a marshmallow, delayed gratification, grew up to have higher SAT scores and better health. However, because willpower is a muscle that tires, the secret to success is habitualizing willpower. By creating if-then plans, for example, if a customer screams at me, then I will look at this card with my service goals. We offload the work of willpower to the basal ganglia, making self-discipline automatic. Final synthesis. Charles Duhigg concludes that while habits are powerful enough to make us act against our best interests, they are not invincible. The power of habit is a double-edged sword. It can lead to mindless addiction or to effortless excellence. The difference lies in awareness. Once you understand that every habit is a loop that can be re-engineered, you gain the power to design your own life. If this book added any important learning in your understanding, do subscribe for next more effective book of this series. Thank you for listening.